Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wire to Wire Media, where we cover the latest and greatest news, races, analysis, handicaps in the world of horse racing. And welcome to the first ever episode of our Road to the Breeders' Cup series for 2024. So, the Road to the Breeders' Cup series is going to be a somewhat regular series. I'm going to look to do one every 1 to 2 weeks, and it's going to be covering the latest races that have happened in all the divisions, and we're going to be making analysis based we're going to be analyzing the races and analyzing the potential fields that we have projecting forward towards the Breeders' Cup. So for this episode, this past weekend, just yesterday, we had the Jim Dandy Stakes won by Fierceness, and last weekend we had the Haskell Invitational. And I think the Jim Dandy and the Haskell are a pretty major landmark in the 3-year-old season. When I look at the 3-year-old season, I think the first major point where we sort of assess the whole 3-year-old crop is once all the final preps for the Kentucky Derby are over. Once you've had the Florida Derby, the Santa Anita Derby, the Wood Memorial, the Bluegrass, Arkansas Derby, Louisiana Derby. Once you've had all of those, that's the first major landmark. Then you have the 3 Triple Crown races, and I think after the Belmont is the second point where we assess how these horses performed in the Triple Crowns. Did we have any injuries? Is there going to be a latent up and comer? Then the next major landmark is after the Haskell and the Jim Dandy. And then after this, I think it's the Travers, and then the final assessment will be made at the end of the Breeders' Cup Classic and at the end of the calendar year. So I think now that we've had the Haskell and the Jim Dandy, and we're really just waiting for the Travers, waiting for the Pennsylvania Derby, I think it's a good time. We have about a month till the Travers. It's a good time to sit and assess the 3-year-old crop and point out any flaws, weaknesses, and who are my top 5 cols in the 3-year-old crop. And I think this is more important this year than any other year because we have no stars in the older male division. A National Treasure probably would be your favorite for the Breeders' Cup Classic, and he's a good horse. He's a Grade 1 winner, won the Preakness last year, but he's no superstar. I mean, he's running figures that some of the 3-year-olds are pretty close to running. Wide Barrio, since the turn of the year, hasn't been the same horse. He was very disappointing in the Saudi Cup, and equally so in the Met Mile just about a month ago. And so I think this year is ripe for a 3-year-old to jump up and be the leader in the division for Horse of the Year and the Breeders' Cup Classic, similar to what we had Arcangelo do last year. Now, he unfortunately didn't end up running in the Classic, but if he had ran, given that Wide Barrio won, and Wide Barrio has never been a superstar, I think it's pretty reasonable to say that he would have at least been right there with Wide Barrio in the Breeders' Cup Classic. So, let's get started. So we're going to start off with last weekend's Haskell, and this was billed sort of as a 2-horse race. It was the rematch of the top 2 finishers in the Belmont, and that was Dornoch and Mindframe, and you had Mindframe go off as the slight favorite. Now, for the Belmont Stakes, I think that really Mindframe lost the race for himself. If he doesn't drift 5 pads to the outside when he was hit left-handed by Arad Ortiz, I think he probably goes and nails down Dornoch on the wire. Dornoch, a far more seasoned, far more professional horse, was straight as an arrow and just ran to the wire. Mindframe, I think he's just a bit of a goofball. It was just his 3rd start. So let's see in the Haskell Invitational. So they break from the gate, and you see Mindframe, he stumbles right here. I don't think that was too major of an impact. He gets back to his right lead, and in a short field like this, when he doesn't really lose position, he doesn't get bumped around, a stumble like that doesn't make much of a difference. Dornoch, we see him right here on the lead, and I think this is his game. In the Kentucky Derby, he was drawn towards the inside, he got shuffled back, he wasn't able to get near the front. When he's been on the front, think about the Remsen, the Fountain of Youth, the Belmont, his best asset is his tactical speed. You see him here on the lead. Mindframe here, he's running well. It's a short field. Really, I don't think there was a lot of talent aside from these two. Timberlake, he's shown that he's probably not at his best going this distance, and pretty normal fraction. So we're just going to skip ahead here. So rounding the far turn, here you see Dornoch and Mindframe here both traveling really well, and you see Mindframe loom up large here, and you think, okay, Mindframe's just gonna go and get on with it. Dornoch down at the rail, and Dornoch is you're gonna see Dornoch's being asked. Mindframe is just being handwritten at this point. as they come for the turn, and you think Dornoch, he's in deep water. You think Mindframe is gonna blow past, but they come off the turn, and Mindframe pokes ahead in front. You think Dornoch, he's all out. A little bit late with the lead change, which I don't really like to see Mindframe, but Dornoch fights back. He's a fighter, and Mindframe again. We see him hit left-handed. Go watch that back. He gets hit left-handed. He switches back one path, darts out. He switches back to the left hand, which he did in the Belmont, and then he re-engages. A great finish all the way to the wire. Dornoch wins by about a half a length, and Mindframe runs second. I think Dornoch, let me just check here. Dornoch got a 103 buyer speed figure for that, and Mindframe also I think earned like a 101. That compares to the 101 that Dornoch earned in the Belmont Stakes. So Dornoch now, the Belmont and the Haskell, two major Grade 1 wins. He's definitely the leader in the division for 3-year-old champion so far. Mindframe, again, I think you look back at this race, it wasn't, the good thing is that he's improved from the Belmont. The Belmont was super erratic. I mean, he darted out, I think, 5 pads. Here, you see him here, when he's being hit right-handed, he's fine. Hits left-handed, darts out. I think if he ran straight, I still think Dornoch beats. I don't think he was as dramatic as the Belmont Stakes. He's still, I think there's, the potential is, the sky's the limit with Mindframe, but I think he's just mentally not there yet. I'm also a bit concerned because he does tend to hang. Maybe is he really a 10 furlong, 9 furlong horse? I know he ran really well in the Belmont and the Haskell, but maybe he can handle it, but he's better off going a 2-turn mile like the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile at Del Mar this year. So I think it'll be interesting to see. Now Rapoli and Todd Pletcher, the same connections. They also have Fierceness, who won the Jim Dandy, which is the local prep. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I think I could see Mindframe now running in the Travers, and you have Fierceness going the Travers, probably as the favorite, and then they keep him away for the Pennsylvania Derby. I think some people, I mean, the captain obvious decision would be to throw a pair of blinkers on him. I still think there's a lot of potential in Mindframe. I think he's just mentally not there yet. He's a late developer. I mean, for his 4th start, I mean, to be hurried out from his Churchill Downs allowance score to the Belmont, and now to come back in the Haskell, very credible performance. Dornoch, look, I mean, his bluegrass was fine. The Derby, I think you can draw a line through the Kentucky Derby. He was shuffled well back. He doesn't want to be that far behind. He wants to be up close and on the pace. He's a tactical horse. He's probably the most accomplished colt so far. I mean, given the 2-year-old form that he had, winning the Fountain of Youth and the Belmont and the Haskell, stringing together two big performances. It sounds like the Travers will be next for him. He was probably going to be vying for favoritism. If he wins the Travers, he's a cinch for 3-year-old champion and probably belongs in the Classic division. 101 to a 103, it's an incremental jump, but I think it's good. I think Dornoch, you have to look at him as the leader in the division. Now let's move back to yesterday's Jim Dandy Stakes at Saratoga, and this was another short field. You had really had 3 horses that sort of stood out, and that was your 2-year-old champion Fierceness, breaking from the outside. You had Seize the Grey, the Preakness winner, and you had Sierra Leone, who ran 3rd in the Derby and 3rd in the Belmont Stakes, and was your post-time favorite. So we take it from the start. Pony Express batting down. They really were overmatched. It was really a race between these 3. You see Fierceness here gets a good clean trip, stalking position, similar to what he had in the Derby. I think the difference is the Derby was on a much faster pace. It sort of fell apart. You see him here, Seize the Grey, much farther off of it. But if you look back to the post parade, I mean, he was a sweaty mess here. I didn't think he was going to run well. And looking back, maybe his Preakness was a product of the racetrack and a product of a weak field. Sierra Leone, as always, well behind. You're just gonna wait for him. And you see the fractions here, moderate fractions for this field, and you see them here. Fierceness traveling really well. I mean, in the Kentucky Derby he was traveling well, but he's traveling well here. Now we're gonna take it to the far turn. Fierceness, he makes an early move. Pony Express, I mean, the connections took a shot with him. He's traveling well, but Fierceness, he's gonna float out to the outside. Now I don't think that was him drifting like Mindframe. I think that was Johnny Velasquez probably trying to keep him on the best part of the racetrack. He's here. Sierra Leone, you see him now come in, and he has just that lugging in style as a deep, deep closer. Probably got hindered a bit by batting down. That bump here probably impacted his momentum, but you see here fierceness, get back to his best. 103 Beyer speed figure for him. He goes all the way to the wire. Sierra Leone, as always, comes with his late rally, but thanks to probably a slower pace than he likes and fierceness being on top of his game, he comes up short here. And a good gallop out from both of the top two. Seize the Great, pretty disappointing performance from him, like his Belmont was. And I think now you really have to question the form of the Preakness Stakes. I mean, Mystic Dan, who ran second to Seize the Great, he didn't run well at all in the Belmont, and looks like he's going to be on the shelf for a while. Imagination, I don't think we've seen him run. None of the other Catching Freedom hasn't run since. So, and if you look at it might have been a product of the racetrack. Being inside on that sloppy track might have helped Seize the Great, because this is two back-to-back pretty disappointing performances. I'm not sure where we'll see him next. Maybe he goes to the Travers. I think the Pennsylvania Derby probably makes more sense for him, and I think he could also be a dirt mile contender rather than a classic contender. Fierceness, we see him get back to his best, and look, it's nice to see, but the issue is he is becoming a bit of an inconsistent horse. I mean, he can't string together two big performances. I mean, he had that Juvenile that was one of the more impressive juveniles of the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, it was like a Texas Red Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I mean, he lengthened away. You thought a mile and an eighth mile and a quarter would be no problem. Comes back in the Holy Bull, comes out pretty flat. Maybe he needed the race. Then the Florida Derby, 110 Beyer speed figure, monster fig. Then the Kentucky Derby. I mean, the Kentucky Derby, I'm not going to be as harsh on it as some other people have been, because I think you look back, look at the pace set up. Mystic Dan was the only horse really close to the pace who ended up hanging around late. And look, when Sierra Leone and Forever Young, who going up the backstretch were third last and second last effectively, when they are there at the wire, I think you can excuse that. He goes on to the Travers, and look, the Jim Dandy to the Travers has been an outstanding move. And I mean, I was just looking at some of the charts for previous years coming in to this race to look at, because the Travers is the next step most likely for both of them. Let me just replay the race here. And the Jim Dandy to the Travers has been a pretty successful move. The Haskell to the Travers has been a horrendous move. If you look at the last, let's say, 10 years, 2014, Bayern wins the Haskell. He runs, I think, dead last in the Travers. And Wicked Strong that year won the Jim Dandy. He runs a pretty good second to VE Day in the Travers. 2015, American Pharoah wins the Haskell, probably his easiest performance ever. He comes back, he runs well to finish second in the Travers. Probably was best that day. That year, Texas Red won the Jim Dandy. He didn't run well in the Travers. 2016, Exaggerator wins the Travers. Comes back as the favorite in the Travers. Wins the Haskell. Comes back as the favorite in the Travers. I think ran like next to last. That year, the Jim Dandy was won by, I think, Laubaum, the maiden. I don't think he ever ran again. I believe he was euthanized. 2017, you had Gervin win the Haskell. He ran horrible in the Travers. In the Jim Dandy, you had one by Good Samaritan. He didn't run too well. 2018, Haskell winner, Good Magic, runs dead last in the Travers, or second to last in the Travers. 2019, Maximum Security. He didn't run in the Travers, but I mean, it's Maximum Security, so we have to take everything with a grain of salt, given that he won the Haskell, given the connections that he was with. 2020, the Haskell, 2020, we'll leave 2020 aside because we know how the calendar was laid out for that year. 2021, you had Essential Quality wins the Jim Dandy, pairs that up with a win at Travers. None of the Haskell winners raced in the Travers. By winners, I mean Mandaloon or Hot Rod Charlie, because there was a DQ. But Midnight Bourbon ran well to be second in the Travers. 2022, you had Epicenter wins the Jim Dandy, pairs it up to win the Travers. That year in the Haskell, you had Cyberknife, who ran second in the Travers. 2023, last year, we had the Jim Dandy was won by Forte, who ran, I think, third in the Travers. The Haskell Go Rocket ran one. He didn't run in the Travers, but you had Mage who ran second in the Travers. I think in the Haskell. I think he ran last in the Travers. So if you take American Pharaoh and Cyberknife out, the only two who finished in the top two, a lot of near to the bottom end of the finish for the Haskell and the Travers, and from the Jim Dandy in the last few years, Epicenter and Essential Quality, the Jim Dandy has proven to be a much better prep for the Travers. And oh, we have Saratoga Live for yesterday on. Well, just happened to be. All right, so let's go looking forward. What is my thoughts on the 3-year-old division as a whole? So I'm going to be honest. I think that this 3-year-old division, I don't think it's ripe for superstars. I think Fierceness, if he gets back to his best, I think he's the best horse by a mile, and he could very well be a Breeders' Cup Classic winner. I think Dornoch, if he continues these incremental, I mean, he jumped up to a 103 in the Haskell. If he can get to, I'd like to see a 107, a 108 in the Travers. I think then you can take him seriously. But the reason that we have to talk about this is because the Classic division is in desperate need of a superstar. I mean, National Treasure, he earned a 105 in the Met Mile. That was a pretty good race. He earned a 103 in the Pegasus Road Cup, and obviously no fig for the Saudi Cup. He's probably the leader in the division for the Classic division, and he's not running spectacular figures. I mean, Dornoch is just two figs behind him. Fierceness, if he runs back to the Florida Derby, he's dusting National Treasure. So I think this 3-year-old division, it's more important than ever. I would like to see someone jump up in the Travers. They're all running high 90s, low 100s. I want to see someone jump into the 107, 108, 109 range. If Fierceness runs back to his Florida Derby, I think that's pretty good. But so far, I think the 4 best 3-year-olds, I would say, as of right now, and I think they're pretty clearly the 4 best. I'd put Dornoch number 1 because of the accolades. He's the most accomplished one so far. I think Fierceness, you have to put him second, given that was a good performance in the Jim Dandy, and I'm willing to give him a pass for the Kentucky Derby. His best is still clearly the best of this crop. I'll put Sierra Leone in third because I think Sierra Leone, he's just at the mercy of pace and trip. I think the day that you get a hot pace, like the Kentucky Derby, if him and Forever Young aren't occupying each other and aren't bumping pads, I think either one of them nails Mystic Dan on the wire. I think they were focused on beating each other, that they didn't end up beating Mystic Dan. They probably both ran better races than Mystic Dan. If Sierra Leone, especially the Travers normally you get a big field. If you get a lot of speed, I think it could set up well for Sierra Leone, and that lugging in, I think needs to improve because I think it sometimes costs him the momentum coming down the stretch. But 10 furlongs is going to be his friend more than anyone else's, that's for sure. And fourth, I think Mindframe. I think he's not there yet, but I think when he puts it all together, he's going to be a very formidable foe. And I think it's a pretty good gap behind them. I mean, Mystic Dan, I think his Derby was a perfect trip. And look, I think Forever Young and Sierra Leone both ran better races than him. In the Preakness, I really don't think he had much excuses against He's the Great. And obviously, his Belmont was disappointing. He's going to be on the shelf. Looks like maybe the Pennsylvania Derby. You'll see him come back. He's the Gray. I mean, I think his Preakness looks like a bit of a product of the racetrack. So I don't think so. For my 5th spot, I think maybe Muth. When you see him come back to the races, perhaps he could take up the spot. But I think those 4, Fierceness, Mindframe, Sierra Leone, and Dornoch, I think those 4 are pretty clearly the best of the best that we have now. And probably for the Classic division, National Treasure is probably the only one really with them, because I mean, Wider Barrio, we haven't seen him get back to the race as well. So that's it for this episode of our Road to the Breeders' Cup series. I think we'll catch you guys next time. We might actually be doing a recap of another division. I think the Distaff division. We might be doing that next week. And for the 3-year-olds, we're really just waiting for the Travers, waiting for the Pennsylvania Derby. So that's it.